Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. So for step 14 D today, I have the greatest uncle in the universe mug. It felt appropriate given what we're going to be talking about today, despite the fact that universe and multiverse is kind of they're not necessarily mutually exclusive if you look at them in the right way, but but it was like, Cosmos kind of thing. So that's what we went with. And inside of it, I'm realizing, I did not bring it with me because I'm bad at this sometimes. The throat comfort tea from Yogi that I have quite often on the show. It's delicious. I like it a lot. And no real reason other than I enjoy it. So getting into what we're actually talking about today, we are visiting once again, maybe for the final time, maybe not, Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse. This book, obviously, my edition here is from the special art set that came out back in January, or it started coming out back in January, I guess. It is a part of that set. It has now been released widely as a solo book. And when it first came out as part of the set, we did a video on whether or not it was worth it to get it as part of the set. Like if the rules in it were so groundbreaking and game-changing that you had to get it as part of the set because you had to implement them as soon as possible. The answer then was no. However, now that the book has been released solo, again, not in this art style, but still has been released, we're going to take a look at it. More like how we look at all the other books that come out. Sort of open it up, take a look what's actually inside of it, talk about it a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead and decide whether or not we like it or not. Given that, this book has been out for 5 months now, and I've had it for 5 months now, we're not going to do a first look and a full review on it later. We're going to sort of dive into the review end of things, and just sort of run with it, and see where we end up. And by see where we end up, I mean, I know where we're going to end up with this, but we're just going to talk about this specifically through and through. We're not really going to flip through it and take a look at it together for the first time. So let's just crack it open and see what we got in here, shall we? So the way that this book is divided up is that there are essentially two parts to it. It is a two-part book, more or less. There are technically more than that, but really it can be distilled down to its two parts. Those two parts are the player options and the monster options. Now, the way that this works really is that there is no new content in this book. Across the board, there's nothing in this book that is wholly new. No new races, no new monsters, nothing like that. It is a compilation and an update to a bunch of different materials that have been released over the course of several years. Most specifically, I guess, this is the compilation of Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and Volo's Guide to Monsters. In that this is the compilation of all of the monsters that are in there. They did, however, cut the lore surrounding the races and societies and things like that they had built in to the Tome of Foes and the Guide to Monsters. Sorry, I'm covered in animal hair right now. They built, or they took all of those out. For better or worse, I personally I'm a fan of the fact that they took it out in the sense that it is helping the trajectory of Dungeons & Dragons the way that they want it to be, in that they are heading more towards a more inclusive space. However, personally, I really enjoyed some of the monster lore that was built into it, like with God, what are they called? Mind Flayers. Jeez. Mind Flayers, Elder Brains, that kind of thing. Beholders, all of that. I enjoyed having something that I could reference and kind of help influence the lore that I was going to be building. However, that is still available on the internet, and if you already owned either of those books, really in print or on like D&D Beyond or something like that, they're still available to you in those formats. They are just going to be taken out of official cycle. It is now being billed as quote-unquote legacy content. So they are no longer the official pieces of material because they are technically now outdated. So this book is a lot more informational than really pretty much any other book that's come out, because there is not a lot of that lore text surrounding most of this stuff. So when you think about the books that are out right now for this game at all, you have obviously a ton of adventure modules. Those kind of out the window. But even more so than things like the Guides to Everything, Xanathar's and Tasha's, or even the DMG, this sort of circumvents all that. The only book I would think that is more like technically number heavy than this is the just flat out monster manual, because that is a set of monster stat blocks and that's it. This one at least has some races in it that do come with a little bit of lore text around them. However, they have gone ahead and they have removed a lot of the lore that can be considered problematic in different ways. And they have actually expanded a lot of the lore surrounding some of these races, because it makes them easier to play, makes them more interesting to play, I guess. And so I'm a big fan. And let's go ahead and let's look at a couple of these and just go ahead and take a look at some of the examples of what it is that they have shifted in here. I am going to go ahead and I'm going to start, I think, with the Genasi. Okay, the Genasi are some of my favorite changes that they've made, because the Genasi, before I really loved. They were the first expanded race that I had ever seen. They are the reason that I bought Princess of the Apocalypse so early on in my Dungeons and Dragons like foray. Like when I first started playing, Princess of the Apocalypse was one of the first books I bought because I wanted the Genasi race out of the back of it. So that should tell you exactly how much I think they are really awesome. However, I was never like super duper thrilled with all of the different features of them. They had such a cool concept. I thought they could be used for so much more, and then they weren't really. You know, they, for lack of a better way to say it, they didn't have a whole lot else going on for them other than their core Genasi traits. And what I am a fan of with this one is that they didn't outright divide them into 4 separate races. However, they removed a lot of those core traits, quote unquote, and they have dispersed them out into each of the individual subsets, so each of the 4 subsets. It's something that I am a fan of. And now there are obviously repeats here. You're going to have creature type in every single one of them. You're going to have size in every single one of them. You're going to have speed in every single one of them. But they broke them out because they wanted to give a little bit more variety in there. So specifically, originally, Genasi were medium humanoids. They gave the ability for any given one of them to be small humanoids as well if they wanted to be. They are still humanoids. And their speed is a little bit different. The earth, fire, and water Genasi are all 30-foot walking speed, whereas the air is 35. They do not all have... No, they do all have dark vision. I just did not get far enough down because water Genasi have a bunch of stuff that come before dark vision. But they also just sort of expanded the way that they are run a little bit here. Specifically, they were given more racial spells each, which is really, really great. A good example is the Earth Genasi originally had Pass Without Trace. They could cast it once, and that was the end of that. They could cast it one time without using a spell slot. No components, nothing like that. And that was it, per long rest. Now, what they can do instead is they know the Blade Ward cantrip, cast it as normal, cast it as a bonus action, number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, which is great. And then at 5th level, you can start casting Pass Without Trace without using a spell slot. Once you cast it, that way you can't do so until you finish a long rest, but you can go ahead and cast it using spell slots as well if you have those spell slots. You get to pick which of your 3 non-physical ability scores you get to go with that. So you get to pick whether it's intelligence, wisdom, or charisma that you use for that, which I think is a really, really great way to do it. And they have that similar sort of thing in every single one of them. Like Air Genasi originally could just cast Levitate once per long rest, and now they learn the Shocking Grasp cantrip. They learn Feather Fall at 3rd level that they can cast without spell slot or material component, and at 5th level then they get Levitate. Same deal, pick your ability score that it is based off of, and you get to go ahead and do it once per long rest, but you can cast it using a spell slot instead if you want to. So they added that to every single one of these, which is really, really cool. I'm a big, big fan of that. I'm also a fan of the fact that they went ahead and they essentially revamped them to become a little bit cooler, and went ahead and revamped them to be a little bit more flexible in the sense that they have these sort of different features that aren't totally different from where they were, but are enough to where it becomes something that is more interesting and more useful. We're going to look at 2 more of them, I think, just because of time. And they're 2 of my favorites. First one is the Kenku, which I am a big, big fan of. Kenku are the one I think that cutting the lore from them are actually just so much better now than they were before. They have removed entirely the issue of the speech patterns. You can still play it that way if you want to, but there is no longer a passage in the book that people will fight over saying Kenku can't create original thought, they can't speak, they can't do all of these other things. Instead, Kenku are just bird people. Kenku are humanoid, medium or small, walking speed of 30 feet, and this is sort of where they get into touching on the old lore from it without having it be something where they are reduced to mimicry dolls, essentially. They are expert duplicators, where when you copy writing or craft work produced by yourself or someone else, you have advantage on the ability check you make to produce the exact duplicate, which is really awesome. You can duplicate stuff super well. You get proficiency in 2 skills of your choice because of your supernatural good memory. And when you make an ability check using any skill with which you have proficiency, you can give yourself advantage on the check before rolling your d20, number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, which is just really, really awesome. That's called Kenku Recall. And then they also have a mimicry ability still built into them, being able to accurately mimic voices and sounds that they had heard before. A creature that hears the sounds will only be able to tell that they are imitations if they succeed on an insight check against 8 plus proficiency plus charisma. And that's the end of it. That's the end of the Kenku, which means that they have taken out all of the negatives. And they've done that sort of across the board here, and they've been moving in that direction for a while. But this is the one where I think it shines the most. Just because Kenku was a race that was just really difficult to play by nature of the fact that they had all of this stuff built into them, and it became difficult to accurately roleplay one based on the lore that was there. So I knew a lot of people that cut that entirely, or they use them as NPCs or something like that instead. Finally, I want to talk about the goblins real quick. Not because there is a major change here, but because they changed one feature in particular, and I think that it's more of a highlight towards the direction that D&D is going, as opposed to necessarily a massive change. You are also human. You're also humanoid. However, you are considered goblinoid if that is a specific effect that needs to be happen. You are small. This one did not change. You are still exclusively small. Walking speed of 30 feet. Dark vision. Great. They gave goblins Fey ancestry, which gives you advantage on saving throws to avoid or end the charmed condition, which is really awesome. I'm a big fan of the fact that they did that. I like that they're kind of starting to link things more to other planes and stuff like that. Nimble Escape is the same. You can disengage and hide as a bonus action on your turn. And the one that they changed that I wanted to actually hit on is Fury of the Small. Fury of the Small now, instead of allowing you to once per long rest inflict additional damage equal to your level, it now allows you to inflict damage equal to your proficiency bonus a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest. So at net, you end up with more damage to be dealt out. However, it has to happen in smaller increments over a longer period of time. Now, this is a really, really good highlight for the direction that things are going, because Wizards is going to be shifting everything to be based on proficiency bonus. If you have not noticed that already, well, here is me telling you that that is exactly what is happening. They're going ahead and they're going to be changing over to that. And it's actually a really good way to do it, because proficiency bonus is the only item in the game that power scales with your character level. It is consistent across characters. It is the best static way to denote your character getting stronger. So I think that that is a very, very important and very, very good metric for them to be using in that way. That's what we've got for races. Obviously, there are many more races than that. However, we're going to run out of time if I just sit here and talk about all the races. I might go back into them if you guys want me to, but we're not going to do that right now. Moving forward to the monsters. The monsters, as I mentioned, are a compilation of the monsters from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and Volo's Guide to Monsters. Now, these are really, really fantastic books that offered wildly different monster lists that they went ahead and put together in this one, so I'm a big fan of that. I really like the fact that one of them had a lot of aberrations in them, and another one had a lot of more like the Fey monstrosity kind of areas. So I like that you are getting sort of all of that roped into one here. They also went ahead and they cut the lore, as I mentioned before, for a lot of these things. Now, things are really just single page entries for each of the monsters, which is not a bad thing, I don't think. I'm actually a fan of the fact that they went ahead and did that, because it offers you a little bit more flexibility on where you're going to be able to put things in your world without being concerned about one of your players being like, actually, this actually does it up here or here. But also, you're the DM, you can do whatever you want. Not the point. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at one of the stat blocks really quick. Not to really talk about any one thing in particular, but just to sort of like go over the general concept here. So first off, you get new art on almost everything in this book. It's phenomenal. I love it. The fact that there is new art makes me so happy inside. My little art gremlin mind is so pleased with that. However, they went ahead and they did change a couple of little things here and there. Nothing big, but they did go ahead and they adjusted things just the littlest bit. The predominant one that you will find in here, if you are going through it and you are trying to actually compare from book A to book B, book A being one of the other two and book B being this one, is that they went ahead and they changed some monster types. Actually, a decent number of monster types to better fit the monster that was actually represented in them. There are more monstrosities. There are more Fey. They went ahead and they shifted things to be demons or devil. Like they went ahead and they went in and they looked at each one of them and they said, is this actually where we want it to be? Yes, no. And then they went from there, which I am a big fan of. I'm very, very glad that they went ahead and did that, because sometimes it just is difficult to figure out what these things are supposed to be if it doesn't make sense. Like, if there's an undead in here, or in one of the old books, that was like kind of undead but more leaning towards a monstrosity, they went ahead and they changed it to a monstrosity in here, which I like. I'm glad that they went ahead and did that, because for me it makes more sense. Quite frankly, that's sort of where I'm at with that one. In addition to that, they went ahead and they adjusted the spellcasting in these stat blocks to be more like the way that they're headed towards. Now, it's not so notably different that you're going to look at it and go, wow, that's amazing. Look at that. It is different, but it is really, it's not that different. I didn't have a problem with the spells in monster stat blocks before. I don't really have a problem with them in this either. And so when I look at it, it's kind of like, I don't really see that much of a difference. But every once in a while, they did go ahead and they shifted things to be spell-like effects as opposed to actually physically casting a spell, even though it was eliciting the same exact effect as a spell. Now, as a DM, you can take that and you can run with it and either say, this is no longer a spell, so counterspell won't work on it, or you can run with it and say, while this is no longer billed as a spell, it's fine. You can counterspell it. I actually wouldn't be super shocked if we saw a rewrite for counterspell in the future here, because of the fact that, one, it doesn't specify in the text that you need to be able to see the creature that's casting a spell, even though I'm pretty sure that's the intention behind it. And two, it really kind of should be something that can get rid of magic as it is being conjured, whether or not it is a spell being cast or like a trap going off or something like that. Or we're going to see an addition of another counterspell type spell that is based around traps. So I'm not upset about it. I wish that they had actually done a little bit more if they were going to be pushing for that so hard, because they did make a big deal about the fact that they were going to be making spellcasting stat blocks easier to follow. And I see a little bit of the change here, but I don't see enough of it to be like, wow, they really, really overdid this one and they made it so much better. So I hope that they do go ahead and they fix that at some point here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap the book there. I highly recommend picking up this book for a couple of reasons. The first one, it's good to have the most recent, like, game data, essentially, in your game so that you can actually go ahead and stay up to date with what's going on. But maybe more importantly, it's not just about what's going on, it's what's going to be happening with this style of play as well. Notably, in all of the races, they pulled the ability score improvements out of there because they wanted to standardize it to a +2, +1 across the board. Notably, in all of the monsters, they took a lot of the lore out because they want the Game Master to have the agency to go ahead and put those monsters in wherever they wanted to and use them in whatever way is applicable, and not have people sit down and go, you need to fix this. So that is the direction that they're moving with it. Obviously, we're going to get more books like Fizzbands, because that book has come out since they made the announcement about the shift, where it's going to be more lore heavy around specific types of monsters and specific things. However, they are doing a hard reset on a lot of the monsters, and by a lot, I mean all the monsters that were presented in the Tome of Foes and Guide to Monsters originally with this book. So I do think it is important to get this. Also, this is sort of your first look, this and Tasha's really, are your first look at how everything like this is going to be handled moving forward. Come 2024, we are looking at a revamp of the 5e system. And by revamp of the 5e system, I do mean, in my opinion, probably a baseline rewrite of how everything started, but not so much that it's going to change the system as a whole. I think they're just going to be re-releasing the PHP, the DMG, the Monster Manual, that kind of thing. But until then, this is our window into what it's going to look like. And it looks very similar, but it does look different. And I think that it's important to note that and for everybody to sort of get on board with that and be ready for that shift to happen when it does happen. So, highly recommend picking up this book. It's a great book. It's a fun book to get to flip back through, especially with all the new art. I hope that you guys pick it up. I hope that you enjoy it because it's a cool book. I don't know what else to tell you. Yeah, and I mean, if you get this set because you need Tasha's and Xanthar's too, these covers are gorgeous. I adore this thing. So that's everything I have to talk about on that. Let's get into what shows we have coming out today and tomorrow. It is Monday, which means that we have the following shows. We have The Paper Dungeon, Chromatic Dice, Beyond the Realms, Unprepared Casters, Greetings Adventurer, Bards of New York, Hapless Heroes, Iron Adventures, Cast Party, Three Black Halflings, Hello from the Magic Tavern, King Leo D&D, Anti-Heroes Anonymous, The Tabletop Tavern, and Top of the Round. Actually, Tabletop Tavern is on break right now. Go ahead and check out their most recent thing. Their most recent season. They are on break between the two seasons right now. I need to take them off of this list so that I don't keep saying them on accident. And then Tuesday, we have Diary of a Dragon Pit, Star Wars First Resistance, Dungeons and Daddies, Bombarded, Hekva D&D, Glass Cannon, and The Queer Questers. Go ahead and check out everybody that I just listed. If you have a little bit of time to go ahead and add a little more D&D to your day, let them know that I sent you because that is going to be funny for me at some point here. And I can't wait for it to happen. But all that said, Thank you guys so much for making me part of your morning routine. I really do appreciate it, and thank you so much in particular to my patrons. You guys are the ones that make this show possible. If you're interested in becoming a patron, check out the link in the description of this episode. Patrons, I am so sorry. I promise I will have a sort of more midweek episode of Sunday Brunch coming out soon. I was traveling this last weekend, and time really just kind of got away from me. Didn't end up getting around to it, but it will be coming out before the upcoming weekend. So hold tight. It's coming. I promise. But with all that said, don't forget, everybody, drink tea, play D&D, and keep on rolling.